Henderson Finance Committee to order. All the members of the Finance Committee are here. We have our Finance Director, our COO, our Mayor, and our Parks Director. Do I hear a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any changes? Okay, all in favor of accepting the agenda, say aye. Aye, that has passed unanimously. Approval of the May 24th minutes. Do I hear a motion?
Second.
Any discussion over that? All right, all in favor of approving our May 24th, 2022 minute meetings, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passed unanimously. Under ordinance and resolutions, we only have two items. The first is ordinance 2022-15, ordinance amending ordinance 2021-22 as amended to reflect an adjustment to the city's 2022 fiscal year budget. Do I hear a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, discussion. This was a stormwater, right?
Yes, and this came to VOMA 2 weeks ago, and now it's here just before the second reading. Why is that?
Yes.
I think it's just procedural.
Yeah, and the code.
Yeah.
Finance has to hear and finance.
I understand why did it come to finance first? I guess that's what I
It
understand.
wasn't.
Available.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and due to the time, we've got
The timing
a
on it,
limited amount of
because we have to spend it,
meetings in
Yeah.
order to pass them,
That's right.
jump in the budget.
Yeah.
yeah, because we have to spend it before the end of the year,
Well,
which is only several days
so
away,
after today, we got
So
2
we
days. to spend.
a week or two, yeah.
So I guess the real question is why we have to
Well, we look at the spend and where we're going to be for the end of the fiscal year, and in the event that purchase orders are available and work can be done, and where we need to be, we'll appropriate additional funds. As we get closer to the year end, we get a better idea what that number's gonna be like, so. Work activity sometimes depends on weather and a lot of other factors, so.
That's
on TV. So Sarah, obviously, she's had plenty of discussions with, Mr. Eckenroth and Terry, but myself as well. Put forth a number that we felt comfortable with.
Do we have a listing of work that we're ready to spend this on? We do. Okay.
So we actually are just publishing on our website now our stormwater list, like we do our paving list, so that's available. We can share it with public
Awesome.
works.
Okay.
One of the things that, we're getting, like everyone's getting, we just got an increase on supply materials for like pipes, box culverts. Some were up almost 50%. So, it's one of those things where we don't want to stop work and not do the improvements. And if we have a little bit of extra time, because we've worked a little bit ahead this year, go out and do center point, some of those things where we can go ahead and do that schedule. So we're just trying to do it to get as much stormwater work done as possible and combat those pricing that's just seen every week we get hit with some new price increase.
And we can run into a situation occasionally where work's been completed, like with raises and prices like that, we could easily expend the budget that we didn't originally anticipate. So we're not allowed by Tennessee law to spend a dollar until it's been appropriated. So work could be completed, but we're not able to pay it until the work is. So
I think the reason we're asking is because sometimes financial things can give you a red flag of larger organizational issues being bad. But in this case, it's actually a good thing. It means that the Public Works Department is firing on all cylinders. So just want to make sure,
And there's no
Right,
obligation for the stormwater fund
No.
to have a certain amount in it, to a beginning balance or as an ending balance.
other than the recommended 2 months of operation.
Correct.
So
Sorry.
move that we, forward.
Any
It's
other-
already there, so I'm not forwarding it,
Well,
but a positive
Any other discussion
recommendation.
on that? Well, are we ready to vote, committee?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor of ordinance 2022-15, say aye. Aye, that was recommended unanimously, and we're gonna have our second meeting tonight at Belma on that. Item B, resolution 2022-32, a resolution repealing resolution 2017-42 with respect to funds reserved for land acquisition. Do I hear a motion?
I so moved. Second.
I have something to say about that. So, just to give you a little background on this, this fund was originally set up because there was so much controversy on the purchase of the Beatty Farm back in 2017, was it? 17. Okay, we had an opportunity to purchase half of that Beatty Farm for $3 million. And then the other half was going to be purchased by a private 501c3 private group, the Friends of Indian Lake. And Mayor, correct me if I'm getting this wrong. For
Was it
another
happening?
$1 million.
Yeah,
We were,
that's right. It was a million and then 3.
yeah, we had 3. We were going to be responsible for the lower part, which was a more desirable area, a more buildable area, and then the hill area, the Friends of Indian Lake. So they raised $1 million to do that. And we had, we went back and forth with this for $3 million, which, in today's world, it probably was a good decision. But back in 2017, we did not have $3 million. We just didn't have it. So in order to, it was a really close vote. It was 7-6. And the only reason I voted in the negative on that, and I think the mayor did too, I can't remember, was because we didn't have the money. And I'm just kind of a financial person, and we're running real thin on our general fund, and weren't quite maxed out on our borrowing capabilities, but it wasn't at that, in 2017, I thought was a good financial decision. So in order for that not to happen again, we developed 1% of the budget, of the operating budget each year. This is what this resolution, the old resolution says, 2017-43. It pretty much states that we would take 1% of the operating budget of the previous year's operating budget for that current year's budget, and put it in a fund called the Land Preservation Fund. And that fund could be used to pay off the debt for the Beatty Farm, part of it, and then part of it would remain in that fund. So that's been happening, and we've accumulated less the payments on the debt of $197,487. I'm still very reluctant to do away with that resolution, because I think that, and the other thing I wanted to mention was, even though we allocated 1% of that, of the previous year operating budget to that fund, those funds still remained in our general fund. So we didn't spend it. Right?
It's still
Correct me if
counted
I'm
as
wrong. Okay.
How can it be in the general fund, which is unallocated funds, yet be allocated?
So the general fund is really more named that as a result of how we collect the money. But the general fund is made up of several different reserves. One of them called the unassigned fund balance. The other ones are assigned in some way. They have different names like committed. And it's based on, some of them are as a result of board action. Some of them are a result of POs that are still outstanding. But this is one of those that are a result of board action, and we put it in what is basically a reserve to carry forward year after year to collect interest, but also to accumulate any other items that satisfy the need of the resolution. So it would just grow continuously until the board decided to act upon.
So Robert, have we been putting aside the 1%?
We have put aside amounts a couple of years, but not every year. The Beatty Farm payments have been typically in excess of what 1% of the previous year's operating budget would be.
Until we refinance.
Until we
Because we
refinance.
changed what the operating budget was.
Yes, well, I mean, we started calculating operating
Differently, right?
a couple of years ago,
Mhm.
but we weren't showing it in the budget in that regard.
Correct.
But I said, it's a, to answer your question, yes, anything in excess of that, we were putting into a reserve. And when we refinanced, now that number's still kind of, it's one way, half another about whether we continue the exact amount or not, but
Is there a way to calculate that amount
I've
since we
kind of been
refinanced?
going off of what the original debt schedule was.
Okay.
Because otherwise,
Okay.
it's all one lump sum now, and trying to use that as a fence post. to
Okay, well,
measure.
that's reasonable.
Yeah.
And also the land acquisition, it was to be for a passive type of land. Kind of park-like land.
Oh,
Can't be used for any other type of land, like
or
if we wanna-
preservation of.
if we want to build a fire hall or if we want to build a police station, we can't use that for that purpose.
Not without.
Not from what the resolution
Right.
states.
But did it have to be passive or could it be parkland?
Parkland,
Okay.
green space, the old ordinance reads,
So, the only reason I lean towards supporting this resolution is because we haven't really been following the spirit and intent, in my opinion. And that's the only reason I lean toward. We aren't following this. We haven't in the past.
well, we should have.
I agree,
I
but we
agree.
haven't. So if we're not gonna follow it in the future either, I'm
So-
leaning toward supporting it.
So what this in effect is going to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, we're gonna be able to spend that money? Is that
It's-
gonna
it's-
190.
It's essentially unreserving. It's putting it into what would be considered the unassigned general fund. So I mean, it's kind of FIFOing it, but we're taking that unassigned general fund and it's going into the pot of money that's helping to pay for the expenditures for next fiscal year is essentially the end result.
But we have enough money to pay for the expenses of next fiscal year. I mean, I'm just so, and Jesse could tell you, when he called me about this, I almost like blew my top. I said, "You're doing what?" I said, "The intent of that was," and then Jesse explained to me in the Parks Master Plan, which was, what, last year, Andy?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
That we have adequate parkland already.
We have compared to the people we would be compared against, like national average available land to build upon, we have as much or more than cities
Based on our population.
based on our population and our parks system and our city.
What percentage of that parkland can still be developed that we haven't?
I don't know the exact percentage, but
Well, give me some
you know,
examples.
for active sports parks, you got still a tract of land at Volunteer Park. We've got a whole section of Durham Farms parkland that could be active park property. Beatty Farm is designated as passive park, which would not include athletic fields. Forest Park, the land that they donated, would be a passive type park situations, mostly wooded areas. So we also have the Linden Drive property, which could be anything. It's the flood property in Ward 3.
Mhm.
So those are examples of land. We also have a large strip of land across from Witten Elementary that everybody forgets about at times.
Where's that?
It's on Scott Street, right across from Witten.
Behind
We've spent the
fans.
last year kind of cleaning it
Oh,
off.
yes.
And it can be active also. It has restrictions due to power lines, but it can be active sports type land.
I'm so reluctant to support this still.
I
Because I just went through, we went through it was major back and forth on the baby farm. Major.
It's different for me because I wasn't on the
Yeah.
board at that time, I suppose, but to me, I think some things have changed. I'm not critical of the decision that was made at that time. It was unanimous after all. But some things have changed. One is that our general fund is healthy. So we would be more likely to be able to purchase land, which I mean, everyone's situation would be individualized, but also, we've done we've commissioned our master plan, and it indicated that the land is there, but the use of the land is not there. And there were so many things that people really wanted, a water park, just all kinds of things, and we don't have the money to do those things. And I understand that garbage costs what it costs, but when I look at our city budget and see that we're spending equally on garbage as we are on parks, that doesn't line up with our community's priorities. I'd rather us spend more money on parks than preserving it for land, which our parks master plan doesn't indicate that we need.
Okay, your point taken, but in 10 years from now, what is that gonna look like? That's the whole intent of this, was for future, not for
Hopefully-
today, in today's world.
Hopefully, we aren't going to be on board in 10 years, but we have this policy for our general fund, that stays intact, the general fund should still be healthy. We don't have a major recession and all of these other things, but,
Yeah, okay.
I don't know.
understand- I
I'm
understand
probably more
everybody's viewpoint,
optimistic.
And I was leaning towards
Just-
supporting this after my conversations, but the more I thought about the reasoning behind it, at this point, I cannot support it.
I have
And I
a
respect,
sense,
and I understand everybody else's
Mhm.
viewpoint on it.
I have a sense that just as kind of what ward you were in, kind of determined if you supported the Beatty Farm purchase, that's gonna translate into whether or not you support this.
I'll just, my ward has 0 parks.
Yeah,
We're the only ward in the whole city.
but you could have,
With
because you do
0.
have a little bit of land in Ward 3 that is not developed. It's not very big though, is it?
Yeah, it's only like a couple.
What did the plan
7
indicate
acres.
to use that for?
This is the only park on Indian Lake Peninsula.
We have none.
No, I know, but that doesn't negate that we hope you do
Well, this
get
is
one.
this is about reserving funds for
For land.
land
Right.
purchases. It couldn't be spent to develop
Yeah.
a farm. But
Right.
if we release it, then it could be. Or something else. I mean, who knows what it would look like dogs over
Yeah.
it, but. Andy, what did the master plan indicate for?
It didn't specifically say what you should build there. It recommends us getting away from building a lot of nice structures and flood properties. I mean, the things you could put there are things like picnic shelters and dog parks. Maybe we have issues with our current dog park being in the floodplain that renders it unusable at times. But it's not, you're not gonna see a bunch of soccer fields over there or baseball and softball fields. But certainly there's got to be some use for it.
It's only about, what, 7 acres?
I
over
don't
there?
think so. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And you have to remember it's in a floodplain.
Very much in the floodplain. Hopefully, I mean, it looks like it's gonna pass the board. I'm just guessing because I'm the only one, and I think maybe Steve Brown was the owner of the board when this passed initially. Oh, and the mayor, I'm sorry. Sorry. I think, I could be wrong, maybe Mark was there too, I don't know.
It was long ago, so long ago that he was on the board, but
And like I said, I want to reiterate, the only reason I did not vote for the baby farm, and you know that, was because we didn't have the money. And I said, well, this would be a nice thing to put in place so that when that opportunity, because that opportunity just kind of came up all of a sudden.
And it was gonna be gone.
Yeah, yeah, and we had to make a, a decision, and I made a financial decision, but looking back on it now, it was a good decision, in the long run, looking at the price of land now. So, but anyway. Any more discussion on this? Jesse, did you want to add anything? Mayor, did you want to add anything?
No, thank you.
Unless you have questions.
Okay. Anybody else? We ready to vote? Let's vote on resolution 2022-32. All in favor of recommending it to the board, say aye. Aye. Or opposed, say aye. Nay. Okay. Let's see here. The last item on the agenda are the reports. Let's do the sales tax first. Robert?
That copy of the local sales tax in front of you. If I have copies, if anyone wants one. Last 2 pages. Absolutely, try those last 2 pages on that. Yeah. Sure, as long as I haven't already handed them out. There should be extras out there. So for the month of May, for May activity, May collections, we had $1,629,000 collected, which equates to $103,000 over last year, which right in line with kind of what we expected and hoped for, which is certainly been in good news for the rest of the fiscal year. Good news in the sense that it's where we anticipated being, not necessarily growing any further than we thought, but that's anticipate. Yes, that's it. Estimating around 12 to 13% on the year as growth for last year over last year's collections, which equates to around 20% over the originally budgeted figures before we got into the inflation numbers and the incredible growth that we've seen. That equates to also 1.8 million over last year's collections as well.
Wonderful. And we spent part of that overage in the mid-year budget. Is that right, Jesse? That's what, 600, 700?
I would
A million, right?
I would look at this 3 million down here below the budgeted figure of 15.25. I would say that's part of the number that we appropriated in the mid-year budget. The 1.8 million would be as compared to last year. So how much we've collected and did over that. But the 3 million would be collected in excess of originally budgeted.
So we absorbed some of that.
Yes, that's from. I asked a question. Yeah. She knew what I
And the
meant.
rest of the overage is included in the fiscal year's budget and the
General fund.
general fund basically.
Perfect. Any questions on that? Good, we're good, committee? Okay. The next item is the hotel motel.
Mhm.
It up.
So hotel motel also for May, as compared to last year, May of 21 would be considered one of the first months of what we would call normal activity, post-COVID activity. So comparing that to this year, we've had a drop of about $500, but that's in some ways good. That kind of means we're getting back to some normalcy and we have comps and we can actually project out. We can see the activity year over year and compare those without trying to negate any COVID impacted business.
Yeah.
But that being said, we're up on the year around $127,000 compared to last year's impacted hotel motel collections. So we've certainly made up that $500. We don't have any worries there.
And we're up at the 21.
Yeah.
And it-
Pre-COVID numbers.
I would hope that June's numbers would be off the chart with all of our activity in our
looks like it,
parks. We would hope.
I mean, all the restaurants were packed this
Yep,
weekend.
yep.
These are usually really delayed. Does this include all of the, because sometimes you say, well, we didn't get them all yet. from some of the hotels.
So, yes, so depending on the day that the finance committee falls, sometimes we got a short month and Tuesday's early enough. The collection of this tax is not due until the 20th, but they have until the 1st before fees are assessed. So occasionally, they'll be mailed on the 20th or whatever. We won't collect them in time to report them to the finance committee. So yes to your question, but with good reason.
Yeah.
It might be- Are you anticipating a number?
For June, I anticipate a minimum 30,000. Like they said, this month has been extremely heavy. I would be surprised if it doesn't break 34,000, but conservatively, I would say 32,000 is our goal here. And that would put us breaking 400,000 easily for the year on hotel motel collections.
Okay, so how are we allocating these funds? Are we allocating them towards our parks improvements programs or our entertainment venues? I mean, what are we doing with these funds?
In last year and this year's budgets, or this year, I mean, upcoming FY 23's budgets, the hotel motel is, the ordinance for hotel motel or occupancy privilege tax is what it's called, states that the board will determine through the budget process every year what the hotel motel is used for. Last year and in this upcoming budget, has been designated to assist in paying off the debt for the inline hockey.
The whole thing? Okay.
No, not the whole thing, just the.
How much is the debt, the yearly debt for the income? Could you break that down or is it hard to break down?
We borrowed 2.5
Yeah.
million for that. So until the point that 2.5
The
million.
firewall was included in that too. the
Correct.
bond.
So until the point that 2.5 million has been paid off, I would say that that's eligible, but it's really up to the board if they want to continue designating that hotel motel in that way. In reality, what occurred, I was using an analogy earlier, it's one tub, multiple drains. And
Yeah.
in reality, what's occurring is we're setting aside hotel motel until it's designated. And then it's sort of general fund is paying for it, hotel motel is refunded essentially.
So how much, I mean,
Similar to the language.
yeah, we're paying ourselves, huh?
Very, yes, in essence, we're shifting one out, another sliding.
Andy?
Can I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
So trying to figure out what's left, like, so we started the year with a projection of a certain amount. I can't remember, like maybe 200,000.
It was a lot less than-
225.
It was a lot less than this.
Right, we started with that, and that was designated 100% of that to go towards inline hockey debt service.
Okay,
In the mid-year, we adjusted the revenue projection by 140,000 to get to, I think, 365 total. Is that something close to that? Something like
It's
that.
340.
Okay, we went to 340 at the mid-year, adjusted our revenue projection.
mhm.
But I don't think in the mid-year budget, we made any amendments to designate where any of that money was going to go. I may be wrong with the exception of pickleball, 19,500 possibly
Yeah.
for a
that-
site plans
that
for
was
that.
designated, yeah.
So other than that, there should have been, I'm just trying to figure out what the current And then we carried over a balance each year too,
We've carried, yeah, it's been about 60,000.
intentionally.
Mhm.
So I'm just trying to get an idea going forward, what the balance is left that could be appropriated going forward.
And how. it
I'm not
could be-
asking for that number.
And, and
now.
how, and what projects it could be appropriated
Well, it
for.
has to be tourism related.
Yes, exactly.
Expenses.
And that may be broad, but it's up to
Yes,
the board.
It's not a
Yes.
question I hate to probably answer it now, but I think it's a valid
So
question.
maybe next
Yeah.
finance meeting, we could kind of have a little,
Sure.
well, at the end of the, because we'll have.
Because if we
an
were at the
year
end of the,
numbers.
if we're gonna
Like
be
a,
over,
like the stormwater, we have a beginning balance, ending balance, what we're gonna spend.
and I don't know, I haven't even looked at this year, what's budgeted projected revenue, and that 100% of that is to be designated for debt service.
Mayor?
So we have a couple recreation related projects coming up that are probably gonna cost us more than we had estimated.
Mhm.
One, Drake's Creek Park with concession stand. Obviously some work on some of the baseball diamonds that we're sort of been putting off, but also the trail at Sanders Ferry Park, or excuse me, Sanders Ferry Walking Trail. So we're gonna have some of those, but we probably won't know the total impact as far as over our estimates, over our appropriation for a couple months. And so I think what I see here is I keep thinking October, November, we'll have a better idea. And if we have a little bit of pot of money, maybe it's 40,000, maybe it's 60,000. I think it needs to go to those recreation projects.
It sounds like it might be more than that.
That'd be wonderful.
Would we be able to like do it during the mid-year budget
I
or
think so.
before?
Oh,
that?
absolutely.
But I don't know
Absolutely.
if like baseball diamonds qualify for tourism.
It's,
I don't know if that's direct to that.
I
I'm
would
not
say-
saying it
There's
doesn't,
also-
I'm
Oh,
just saying.
Lord, I'm in here for that.
Is there
So-
anything
Yeah.
parks, any term?
I would say it
anything
would
in the Parks
qual-
Department would qualify for that?
We
and
qualify just
we may
like
need
hockey.
we may need our, possibly our city attorney to weigh in here, but there's another element to this
Well, some
because it's
people
not
are
its
in trouble
own,
for this.
it's not its own, well, that too. But I was going a different direction, but you're exactly right. It's not its own exact fund. It's, the way the ordinance reads is that through the budget process, the board shall determine the use and what's applicable. In my mind, if we collect more than 200, if we budgeted 200,000, we collected more than 200,000. And the selected use, AKA debt payment, was in excess of that, I would think that all collected that year would go towards the selected use. So just similar to, think of other than debt payment, but inline hockey, in the event that we anticipated it cost 40,000, we collect 40,000, we're square. But if we collected 50 and the bill was 2.5 million, well, all 50 would help fund that. And so I think that adds an element to it. It doesn't mean that that's my recommendation. I'm just saying it's kind of however the board wants us to
How
do it.
much
We're
is
happy to put it, to set it aside.
How much is the total debt payment for that bond?
It's for that portion, around
Yeah, that portion.
that portion would be, let's see. Page, it'd be half of our debt, so around 250 to 300,000.
Okay, so that should be taken right off the top. And then whatever else is left stays in the fund until we decide, the board
Yeah.
decides what projects they want to spend it on, right?
I mean, that's a method of doing it. I'm not
The only caveat I would add to that is when we're rebuilding the rinks, half of that was gonna have to be done whether we covered them or not. And I think the intent was to use the hotel motel tax to cover the portion that it's gonna cost to cover it. Because that is what is used to bring people here.
How much is it?
I mean, it was about 1.2 to cover it. That was, it was
The
about,
1.2
you
additional
see what I'm saying? That
plus the,
the tourism part of that is they're covered and you bring people
Okay.
here.
so
so
maybe
I-
we need to
I don't know.
recalculate that debt payment. then.
Well, I don't know that you recalculate the debt payment.
Well,
but
not the payment, but
just
the portion
how you're looking
that
at
comes out of the hotel motel tax.
I mean, it's all coming.
What adds
I
into
like
it
the
too.
way Jamie's thinking about it, which is anything parks that gets used for any tournament, which is everything. We're good, but I just know that people got in trouble, or other municipalities got in trouble for using it in ways that they said it didn't qualify.
But there's also the opportunity,
Might be those people.
Yeah, we were very careful about
I
that.
know.
there's also opportunities in many other cities that they pay for a tourism director. Maybe we contribute more to the tourism office of Sumner County. Maybe we hire somebody else or redesign a position that's more about tourism. So that's certainly applicable too. I'm not saying I favor that, but those are.
There's a lot of
applications.
ideas to think about.
Yeah, I think we
I
were
have those
very
visions.
careful when we developed this whole thing, when we first, didn't you do a lot of research on that too, Robert, you and the mayor? About what would qualify, and Andy, what was qualified, what didn't qualify?
We had the lobbyists for the Hotel Motel and Restaurant Association come and talk. to us.
Right, right.
And one of the things that I got from that was to have a separate proprietary fund. There are pros and cons to that. And we discussed that at the board level, and we didn't set it up that way. We could still do that. And so we know how much is sitting there. It'd be very much like the drainage fund, stormwater drainage fund. Is all this money that's coming in, it goes toward that, and we keep track of it. It's like a separate budget.
But isn't Robert in essence doing that
Yeah, we
as a
can,
separate fund? I mean, aren't you
It's
doing that
doable.
anyway?
it's doable, yeah.
Like
We-
a-
we-
I mean,
What
we
we
is,
can-
what is that fund called again? I can't
It's
remember.
it's not proprietary. What, I said that wrong.
It's a
Micro.
Enterprise.
Enterprise fund.
Yeah.
enterprise, yes. I couldn't think of the word, yes.
And I'm not
Well,
saying
I
I
mean, that-
recommend that, but that's
I
one
mean-
option too.
As long as we're dispersing the funds properly and
Yeah.
accounting for it. Yeah, I'd like to see something like
I
maybe
don't know if
that.
that overcomplicates it or undercomplicates it, but six of one after the
Yeah, I
other.
mean,
Probably.
For setting up funds, that's all it takes, the board vote, you know. But
That's gonna overcomplicate everything.
no, not necessarily, no. It's in our budget ordinance, you see each fund separated out.
It sounds like we need to do that. And even if it does overcomplicate things, just mitigate risk for the city.
For the accountability. of the
Yes.
perspective
What did the
of
auditor
the-
say about that?
We're
we have clean audit.
we're fine both ways. We're tracking it appropriately. Imagine assigning it a number of one versus assigning it a number of two.
Okay.
Our accounting stream accomplishes it within the general fund, but it also would accomplish it in its own thing. I mean, it's a preferential thing, and I wouldn't mind doing either way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I remember having that discussion and we decided not to do it for whatever reason. I can't remember.
It was wait and see.
Oh, yeah, because we didn't know how much we're.
It was all new to us.
I think we
Yeah.
better regroup. Let's get some more information and regroup. Maybe it's the right time for us to look at it again, and we have some questions about it that are legitimate, I think.
I think we're just trying to focus on the correct uses of it at that point. That
And
was
make sure
done
we all
correctly.
understand
Yeah,
where it's going and where it is going.
and yeah, and yes, that did come up, Rachel, previously about other cities. And they had Jamie,
It makes
Mayor,
me
didn't they
really
have to
happy.
give some money back or something, or reimburse something other?
I think that was sort of a threat. And what it came down to is that the restaurant in the Hotel Motel Association, they were real strict on what you used it for. They were very strict on how much you asked for.
Okay,
Didn't they use it, was it sidewalks?
Oh, they have people who are using for sidewalks, for road paving.
Road
and
paving. was
for-
the
and
big
for
one
police
that was
cars.
like-
And those
Yes.
were, and the way they looked at it was,
They just
No,
put it in their operating budget.
they have to have.
that's pretty much what it looks like, but,
So-
but there wasn't any protests from the Hotel Motel Association.
All right,
Yeah. Okay,
gotcha. I didn't remember the details. That's pretty blatant.
okay. All right, any other discussion on that? All right, we're at Stormwater Fund.
Right, this was a report. Be quite honest with you, I'm not sure how it got on the agenda, but I don't mind putting one together for you. I imagine that it has to do with the appropriation ordinance that was on the agenda as well. So what we've done essentially last year's actuals thrown together with this year's budget compared to year-to-date actuals for the stormwater fund. And as you can see, we're spending close to 100% of the budgeted figures, and that's part of the necessity for, but the FY 22 budget column does have this ordinance included within, so.
Okay, this is in there.
Yes,
Okay.
so this is what the fund will look like should this get approved. So just providing further clarification
Okay.
on.
So this has the additional 250 added.
Correct.
So the majority of it is really going to drainage.
Mhm.
Such
Very
an
much so.
awesome, beautiful site. Anything else? Robert,
Nothing from.
Andy?
Thank you, Barbara.
All right, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of adjourning the finance committee?